game, it's simply how we've existed.
Welcome to Steve-O and Kai Show. I'm Steve-O.
And I'm Kai.
Today we just wanted to talk really briefly on suffering in silence. And we know that many of us are really good at that.
Absolutely. I think a lot of us tend to have things going on in our lives, and we tend to keep them to ourselves, just put them off to the back burner, don't really try to identify with the things that are really going on in our lives. So we begin to shut ourselves out and in turn suffer in silence.
And with that, there's a sense of unappreciation that you kind of give yourself. And so you don't give yourself the okay to talk to someone what's wrong. You don't give yourself the okay to seek a counselor or seek someone that can really help you in your time of need because of shame. And for many people that are African Americans or Black people, the subject of mental illness does not come up in the household, neither how to deal with it.
Yeah, and I don't think it's really identified as a mental illness sometimes because you don't really want to be stigmatized or labeled with a crutch, especially since I know I dealt with that a lot in my childhood growing up, especially knowing that I needed something to help my mental instability, but I always ran away from that. I never wanted to be a part of that. Or if I seen my mom and my brothers, everybody, taking care of themselves mentally, I didn't want that because I never wanted to be labeled. And I never wanted to be identified as having a problem. But in turn, it gets worse, and it doesn't help when you don't seek help.
And that silence time, that time that when you give yourself that space and time to concentrate on what's bothering you repetitively over and over and over again, that's the time where a lot of damage happens, because you begin to tell yourself all kind of things. And part where I guess we wanted to really talk about was that part where you're dealing with discouragement, despair, rejection, or some kind of a bad feeling that you didn't necessarily invite, but it came in certain places in your life. And the more that you concentrate on it and dwell on it alone, the worse it'll be for your mental state.
Absolutely. Seeking help whenever it's available or whenever you feel like it's needed is definitely something that I strongly encourage. It took me a while to realize that I did need some form of help. So not all help is good help, but you definitely have to weed that out or figure that out.
That's a really good point. And many of us worry about money, and we worry about finances, and we worry about how we're going to make it. You may not necessarily be very close to being broke, but you can relate to a panic feeling financially. And for those people that really don't even have any kind of resource, and you're just looking for some kind of help, we do want to put out there the National United Way number to 211. That number, some people might say, is not necessarily the best. People that have called it, honestly, but to me, it's a really good start. And if you talk to them and tell them what you're dealing with, they will give you numbers according to the issue that you're having. No, it's not the best at being, I guess, the genie making your wish or your dreams come true immediately. But they do have means and they do have ways. And it is a resource. It's something better for those that never had any kind of resource. That is something better than nothing. Also, right now, because of the pandemic, there's more money in food and there's more money in income. So if your state or your city allows you to have access to those benefits, really don't worry about necessarily it being what the government is doing, and you don't want the government assistance. You know, a lot of those things does not matter when you're in need, and if you're really in need, you'll take the help.
And I think the biggest problem in our community, the Black community, as a whole, is finding people like us to actually talk to, that understand what we're going through, and what's going on in our homes and how we're raised and we're brought up, not to downplay, but, there are a lot of different white doctors that really don't understand the nature of our background and our traumatic experiences that we have to endure while we're living life. So those are most of the challenges that you'll probably end up having to face when trying to seek help or find help. But the best thing to do is to try and find some form of help. Suffering in silence is definitely deadly. I would hate to lose, or for someone, some families to lose another brother or another sister or another cousin, any form of loved one, because there's no help or nobody available to talk to. You got to start somewhere.
Especially if you identify yourself or you're part of the LGBTQ community, because the suicide rates are still very, very high, even with youth. And a lot of parents, be it religious or not religious, both sides are both kicking their kids out the home when they find out that they're a little more different than what they want them to be. And we do want to throw out there the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, which is 24 hours a day. And that number is 1-800-273-8255. Also, if you would just Google some other local tips, maybe in your community, they could probably assist you as well. But definitely, I don't want to not give this number, the 1-800-273-8255, which is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Suffering in silence does cause damage, and it does cause depression. And when you get to that part of Great Depression and you're not moving and you don't want to get up and you don't feel motivated, I mean, I've been there for a while. And when you're just in a dark space mentally, and during that time, again, telling yourself all these things that are not real, but all these negative things that sound, it's like you begin to feed off of the negativeness that you hear about yourself. And the more you hear that, and the more you mentally tear yourself down repetitively, the more you'll be at the part to where you will feel your life is worthless. And it's at that time when you feel that your life is worthless, you should really reach out. But I would prevent that by saying, if you see those signs of depression, if you see yourself feeling that way, call somebody. Let somebody know now. You can message us and let us know if you need somebody to talk to. We are available. And I think you had something to share before we get our day started for the day. And we do hope everybody have a good week. And
yeah, I was just doing some research, but it was a known fact that where I lived before, and in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, it definitely had a higher suicide rate than any other part of in any other part of the state of Colorado. So you can only imagine, the type of life that I may have had to endure, while living up there and having to find some form of freedom, down here in the city of Denver, versus being up in the mountains. But it was a very uh, it was a very traumatic experience, to say the least, about how life was like being up in the mountains. I do intend on writing a book about it, so you guys can experience that as well with me, along this journey.
And I would encourage somebody to also tap into some spiritual strength. You know, I find it very helpful when you build yourself up spiritually. It's very helpful, it's a defense against depression. It's a defense against those things that harm you. It's a defense against suicide. It's a defense against suffering in silence. And it's not that if you're spiritual, it doesn't happen. I'm just saying it helps. It gives you a little bit more faith. It gives you a little bit more encouragement.
It helps you feel like your day can keep going on, like you can just deal with about anything. Not saying that we're punching bags and we can't take any and everything, but it does help you, get through.
Well, that's about it for today. I did want to give condolences to a lot of the families right now in the Black community that are suffering. It's like suffering from losing loved ones to the hands of the police. And these funerals are happening frequently, and they've been happening. Some people just don't get the national story. As we all know, these things are happening. Just ask that you pray for us, while we're here, and we're in a community that deals with racism, and there's national news that's been happening from this community. But we just ask that you keep us in your prayers and good thoughts, and we'll keep you in ours, because we know where you are probably just not as any different than any other place.
Absolutely.
And we all can be high-headed and lose it right now, and start really going crazy. But our personal strength and our individual strength is very important, and our mental state is very important. So some things, you may want to get involved in, but if it's too much, just don't get involved in it. You can be involved in it at a distance,
Definitely.
from your heart. But that's about it for us today. We hope you have a great week, and this week, try not to suffer in silence.
Talk to somebody, whether it be a loved one or somebody that you're passing in the street. Just talk to somebody. People do want to know that people are okay.